All right, we are live. I love this series here. We don't do a lot of these, right? We only do these every 3 months. It's very
Oh, that's great.
special. Yeah, we do this every 3 months. Very, very special episode, our Blue Crowbar winning podcast. And we are here with none other than Emily Chiu, our Blue Crowbar winner. Round of applause. And of course, we are also here with our distinguished, very special guest judge, the one and only Shannon Washington.
Hello.
So I will moderate, but really it's about you two. Shannon,
Okay.
you judge this dang thing, and thank you so much. I know it's not easy. We started with making the brief. Cooper was very instrumental with you on that. I want to give him a shout out. He usually is on these calls. He might hop in too. Cooper is our strategist. Yeah.
No, good brief, good tight brief. We love
Good tight brief. That was a couple months ago. We did that 4 months ago, probably. And time is weird. Time is really weird.
Time is construct.
But you landed on what brand did you land on, Shannon?
Tony's Chocolonely.
Nice. And why that brand? What popped in your mind there?
I really wanted to do something CPG. That's where my mind started. I was like, because I feel like CPG brands, they're things that, have like a very high touch value. And so it's something that you're going to see in a Target. That's what I think of, like, CPG or whatnot. But then I wanted to go a little left and not like Axe body spray or, like something that we all know, lotion or something like that. And see what is a brand out there that is doing something a little bit different that could be on the surface, quote unquote, hard to communicate, but also had a sense of social value. Since I think, the most successful brands, whether they're rising or established, there's a profit value, there's a product value, but there's also a social value, right? That are connected to them, and balancing those three can be a little interesting for a creative. And so I wasn't trying to make it hard per se, but I wasn't trying to make it easy. Because everyone, like feels like they know soup or they know, toothbrushes or something like that. And with Tony's Chocolonely, I found myself, I would buy them from Whole Foods and like become like super obsessed with them because like all of the flavors or whatnot. But then you find out about, the company's heritage and history and commitment to sustainability, commitment to, fair trade, open chain. Those are things that not only you want as a consumer, but I feel like you want the client, like people who are doing something more than just selling a thing. And so it was a little dual-sided of like, what's something that's accessible to this audience of like, okay, I'll get it. Like everyone thinks that they know chocolate, but a lot of people don't know how chocolate actually arrives to your doorstep, right? And then also like, how could someone balance what could be seemingly a very simple premise, like buy chocolate, with something that is not so simple, like buy chocolate that has a purpose to it, and get people to care about a purpose that a lot of people, I'm not going to say don't care about, but don't know about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why the brand came top of mind.
And it's weird and it's funky and it's fun. And it's something kind of like new. So it would be like a launch. I was thinking about that too.
Oh yeah. So we came up with that brand, and that was like 4 months ago. And then we created this brief, which we'll get into, and then we opened it up to aspiring advertisers across the world, essentially, to team up with a team of up to 3 people. Emily, it's just Emily. I just want
to like 1, 2, and 3 meet.
It's insane. We're going to get into that. We launch this brief, and then we give aspiring advertisers with 3 years or less agency experience. So you're competing up with people that have some agency experience, Emily, and you crushed it. And then they submit their campaign. Shannon, you scrolled through all the submissions and you landed on you ranked out the top 4. You looked through all of them. Then the best in show is Blue, which is Emily. That's why she's on this show, networking with you. She's going to ask you for a job, I told her. And then Gold gets some time with you as well. just not on a podcast. Silver and bronze get written feedback, which we'll send over to them. So it's a really fun program to get these students to build their portfolios. 5 to 6 campaigns is what the agencies are looking for. So you already got one here, Emily. That's in a pretty good spot. You'll get some feedback later from Shannon as well. But yeah, I think next thing that we should probably talk about was what the brief said. And Shannon, you can start. Emily, you can chime in too on how you interpreted it. I have it in front of me. So we gave this background first and foremost of Tony's Chocolonely, right? Being, established in 2005 by a group of friends who were horrified to learn about the exploitation that still exists in the chocolate industry. So they've created this fair trade cocoa practice. It's a little bit of a premium to their farmers that they pay, ensuring that everyone involved in the production of their chocolate gets a fair deal. We know that. And they do a really good job at that branding. Like, this is a good brand, like strong. So it's like, how do you pivot? What are we trying to do here? So Shannon, talk about the target audience for this campaign. Who did we want to sell this chocolate bar to, get the attention of?
Millennial parents. I didn't want to just do parents because, again, like, you have to get specificity. It's if you can get it, take it. I feel like millennial parents who, on average, would have, mid-range. I don't want to say mid-range kids, but kids that are not quite babies, not quite adults just yet.
Yeah.
I say this as someone who is a geriatric, like almost dying millennial, whatever you call us these days, young Gen X. But there's a lot of conversation around how we were raised versus how we want to raise our children.
Right.
There's a delta between the two. There are certain things that we choose to accept, certain things that we don't. And so I think that this is, a generation that is redefining parenting in some really interesting ways. And so that's why I wanted to stay with millennial parents specifically, especially connected to how do you balance so many messages, since I feel like millennial parents are balancing so many different styles of tradition.
Right. And it says here that they don't want to spoil their children, but they also understand that there's a time and place for treats. They're busy, they juggle a lot, so they appreciate high quality products that are convenient and ethically sourced. So we have the target audience here. Emily, you are not in that target audience. And this is why I love this brief, because we see it a lot, the college student promoting Red Bull on a college campus, which no shade, like, I get it, but we want to, you want to stretch the boundaries and showcase that range that you can do your research and understand a different target audience,
right?
Get into their mindset. And you did that, Emily. Where else can we go here? The human problem, I'll read it off. The sweet treats parents choose say a lot about themselves and how they raise their children. Moderating their kids' sweet treat consumption is hard enough. Doing that while also choosing a brand with ethically sourced ingredients is even harder. And the big insight that we found, Shannon, you found, was millennial parents face a never-ending mountain of can't win situations.
Yes.
There is enough guilt associated with chocolate as it is. The way chocolate is made shouldn't be one of them.
Right.
Boom. Anything to add there? It's so strong, so powerful.
No, I think we tried to, box it really, really simply. Yeah.
And this is what we set up. We asked, develop a campaign that balance, create a campaign. That's what we asked for. Show millennial parents that Tony's Chocolonely allows them to indulge their kids without guilt. So this is where I tee up our Blue Crowbar winner, Emily Chiu, and you just graduated from Boston University. Shout out to that school, that program.
Nice.
Congrats to you on graduating. You did this over the summertime, right? So I would love for you to quickly introduce yourself, tell the world who you are, and then we'll get into the work, which is what matters the most.
Yeah, this is so exciting. I'm so honored to be here. The fun was super fun. And I think when I saw the brief, I was like, oh, this brand I've never heard of Tony's Chocolonely before. So I had to do some research, but the brand just seems so fun, such a cool tone of voice and like the visuals and everything. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm interested. And a little bit background about myself. I am from Hong Kong, but I went to school in BU, which is Boston University. And I did a undergrad in advertising and I had a minor in psychology. And I'm hoping to get an art director role in an agency setting. And currently I'm based in New York. And yeah, we'll see where things go from here.
Things are looking good for Emily.
Yeah.
You know what you want to do, art direction. You're in New York. You got a great degree. You got some cool background, cool experience, it seems like. And you just won this.
I was gonna say, you just won a competition.
Yay.
It's good. It's good to be Emily with no partners, nobody else, on your team. So that says a lot too. So thank you for submitting, Emily. And Shannon, thank you again for creating this wonderful brief. So
Of course.
Emily, tell us, let's walk through your campaign and the research that went behind it. This is your chance to take the microphone, showcase the idea. This will be on our website, www.crowbarawards.com. So if you want to pull that up while you're listening, that's a good opportunity too to see what we're talking about. But Emily, the mic is yours. Feel free to riff. Shannon, join in whenever you'd like to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I kind of was thinking in terms of the strategy or like the big idea was trying to really understand the target audience because I'm not the target audience. So I was like trying to think of like, oh, what are some things that parents think about? And I think an insight that I just thought was really interesting is that no matter what parents do, like no matter how hard they try, there's always something that like they get kind of like, I don't know, crap on, like, oh, like you're trying your best, but then it's kind of like the can't win situations. And so I just thought like, I'm just trying to kind of figure out a way, how can I communicate like this chocolate being ethical without kind of guilt tripping them in a way that it's like, oh, you should get this chocolate because otherwise you're like a bad parent kind of way. And also just tying in like the message to a millennial parents audience with that ethical message behind, kind of balancing those two message in like a one idea. That was something that I found slightly difficult to work on in the beginning. So I have different ideas in the beginning. And then since I didn't really work with a copywriter, so I kind of had just a document with like a lot of lines, like brain dumping anything that I had. I had like a slight creative block after maybe working on it for a bit. So I was like, I talked to some of my mentors and my professor, and they're like, maybe you need to take a day off, just like walk around, take some time. Maybe you've been looking at it too much and like you just need a fresh eye, maybe like take a shower and come back to it. And that really helped me. And then suddenly everything kind of flowed naturally. And then I found this kind of I started writing a line and then thinking of situations where I think parents should be celebrated for like their good parenting. And one of the lines that kind of just came out was like, oh, that's like that feeling of good parenting is really good. Like, how can I tie that in to maybe the feeling of also being an ethical consumer? And that's kind of how I wrapped the whole campaign with like the title of Sweet Wins. So there's like a double meaning to it. I hope you guys got it in a way. So sweet wins as in like an adjective. It's like, oh, it's awesome to be a good parent, like in all kinds of situations, which I kind of presented through like different billboard scenarios. And then there's also the sweet, which kind of describes the taste of a chocolate and the fact that it's also ethical. That's a sweet win in that area. So technically it's just like wrapping everything up nicely together.
Great. I want to pause because I'm curious. I had a quick question before we talk about the platform then. That insight, how did you come up with like that creative platform when like about the parents? Like did that just come top of mind? Did you have conversations? Run us through like that big idea and how you got there in the earlier portion of this campaign.
I think I was kind of working on it on my own, but I have two baby cousins and they're like 2 and 4. And so I'm assuming my uncle is technically in the millennial parent. So sometimes like I'm trying to think of, oh, what are some things that they're doing that like maybe they don't hear like appreciation or like, yeah, they don't get appreciated for often, or like sometimes maybe they'll mess up one thing and then like they're trying their best to kind of like make things right. So I'm trying to think, oh, what is something that I can say to them or something that I can convince them to make them want to buy this chocolate? and also tell them that it's ethical, which is like even better
Mhm.
in a way. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and some of my mentors, like they have friends who are millennial parents, so they would chime in and be like, oh, I know my friends who are like thinking this way, like is there anything that you can kind of like write or show that would appeal to them? So yeah.
Love it. Love it. Is this true, Shannon? Do you think that's true among millennial parents that it's kind of like they don't get a lot of appreciation? And who's this appreciation from? Is it from the kids or from like their cohort or their parents?
All parents. I think that's a very common insight for all parents. All care, and let me not even say parents, just caretakers, like
Yeah.
whether you're fathering, mothering, caring in all kinds of ways of, a child or a dog or a parent, an older parent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you're like, because you kind of like design like the best case scenario in your mind, and you kind of you're essentially challenging yourself on a daily basis, and you do it, and it's like there is no applause, but you feel good about what it is that you do, and that's the important thing. And so I'm not going to say like people don't get credit, but you're not in a place to receive it. You're not in a place for it to be recognized and received in a way that, you win a public award or something like that. And so, but how do I say this? But you still want some recognition, like at the end of the day, like even if it's from yourself, and you want recognition from your partner or your family or someone, and even if you don't get it, you want it. And so I think
How do you like to receive that?
Conceptualizes differently per generation.
How do you like to receive those compliments, that validation? Is it like words or gifts?
They'll say, give me chocolate. No, words. My sweet spot is words of affirmation. One of those lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Emily?
I guess words is kind of the first step, but I don't know. Afterwards, like a gift would be nice. I feel like a chocolate, it just boosts like serotonin. So I'm always down for one.
Dark chocolate, regular milk chocolate, white chocolate. What are you guys vibing with?
Milk chocolate, team milk chocolate.
Chocolate.
I like there's a brand, competitor brand. They have these cup chocolates. I like the milk chocolates of that brand. If you've checked that out, but I will take that part out most likely. But back to, so that gives some good context, right? So you kind of put yourself in the mind of the target audience, Emily, and you said your uncle, I believe, or your cousin has kids, so you kind of thought about them, had some conversations with your cousin. Is that correct?
My uncle. I didn't have a conversation, but I was just like thinking about it.
2 and 4. They're too young for a conversation.
Yeah.
Got it. So you had these conversations, and that's where the lack of validation, like big idea, came into play. So then the campaign platform was Sweet Wins. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Got it. So Shannon, what is your take as you're combing through all of these sorts of campaigns? We got a lot of great submissions here. What stood out like top level to put Emily in this campaign title of Sweet Wins as the best in show?
Well, for me, excuse me. For me, the number one thing that I'm looking for is simplicity. Like, how can this reach your target audience, but also like your secondary and tertiary audience? There's always an aperture, right? Like a scale that's there. But in order to do that, and not like speak quote unquote inside baseball, it has to be super simple and easy to get. So that was the first one. Some of the other ones were very simple too, but perhaps a little too much so, or a little too complicated to be like, wait, what are we doing here? This idea was very, very easy to follow. And I also like that it had a sense of empathy without, I don't want to say without emotion, but without it feeling patronizing, if you will. And I say that because, there's always like the brand that goes, we get it, mom. And it's like, okay, yeah, you don't really get it, versus this kind of came off as like, being like a voice in the moment, of, you survive. I'm looking at your out of home example, like survive the weekend sports tournament, like, yes, like any parent's going to know, or if you have a child in your household that plays sports, and that it 9 times out of 10 it gets on your nerves because it's wildly inconvenient. There's like all this other stuff happening, right? And capped it off with your ethically, made chocolate, which we can talk about the copy in a minute. The thing that I also liked about this, though, was it's a sweet win for the parent and for the child. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm just going to give it to my child. Like, it was like, no, this Tony's Chocolonely can be your sweet win, or it could be a sweet win for your child, or it could be a sweet win for the whole family, So it left a lot to the imagination in a very good way. I always like to tell people, like, from clients to consumers, like, let people define it for themselves. If it's over defined and you're not, that person is not in the definition you're given, they're not going to connect with it because they don't see themselves in it. Whereas this one, it did that. So I think that was like the first thing that caught my eye. And so I remember marking it and being like, I like this. And then I had like this system of like red, yellow, and green of like, stop, maybe, go. And I marked it green, and then I came back to it, and I kept coming back to it. And that's when I know I like something, where I'm like, let me do, okay. And,
Yeah.
not quite comparing, but, like organizing thoughts. So yeah, like the simplicity, the empathy, the use of empathy, if you will, and the duality of the messaging, I thought was really fun. I didn't realize it was just you until the very end. And then I was just like, oh, it made total sense for some of the not challenges, but some of the edits that I had for it. I was like, oh, that makes total fucking sense.
Yeah.
But I was also duly impressed because, yeah, I was like, she did it by herself. I love that.
Emily, do you want to run through some of the copy, and then we can get into some of the constructive portions of this? So reading off, I see that you have some billboards here, some out of home, some digital. You don't have to read them all. I mean, you could if you want to hammer them out, but yeah, go ahead and read through some of these headlines that you wrote that encapsulates the big idea here.
Yeah. So I kind of worked on this on my own. So I did have some kind of like struggle when it comes to like copy and stuff. But I tried my best. So
Sure.
I hope it works. And most of these copy kind of come from like scenarios where parents really should be like, oh, I think I deserve like a thank you, or like, oh, I did it kind of moment. So I have some scenarios, for example, like, oh, you finally got your 4-year-old to sleep and found the perfect ethical chocolate treat for them the day after sleep. And then there's kind of like the tagline at the bottom, let Tony's Chocolonely be one of your many sweet parenting wins. And then another one could be restored sibling peace and rewarded them with an ethical chocolate bar. Sweet. And I can read one more.
Yeah.
And there's one that's like, oh, got the kids out the door on time with an ethical chocolate snack packed. Sweet. Let Tony's Chocolonely be one of your many sweet parenting wins. And then the visuals, I kind of played with like what the brand has already been using, which is like kind of using the chocolate bar as a little figurine as like the kit. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really smart.
And then you threw on reward charts, some other executions, as well as a museum of chocolate. Those are fun. Talk about the rewards chart real quick.
Yeah, I think this one was really just thinking of, oh, what are some stuff that would really benefit the parent? Like, why would they want to buy the chocolate if they don't want like the full chocolate? And I've like an insight that I was talking to, I heard from a lot of people is that, oh, a lot of parents use reward charts to like reward their children when it comes to like, oh, good behaviors. And if it's an ethical chocolate that's built in, then like parents don't really have to think about the reward. Like they can just buy the chart. It's kind of like a all-in-one, and they can just write it down like the activity they want to reward their kid for example, oh, just brushing their teeth like morning and night, or reading a book, like simple things like that. And then it's just an easy system, and for a brand to kind of do that for free just shows that, oh, like we really know what you need. Like we're not just a chocolate brand, like we want to cover like other bases but also have our product in there somehow.
Got it. So, Shannon, what are ways that, because a portfolio, right? We're always working on it. We're trying to make improvements and stuff. So Emily's looking for her art direction entry level position soon here. So how can we get this campaign just a little bit tighter for her to work on? And I think going through edits like this, just quick feedback and how you approach this, Shannon, will help everybody listening so they can look at their own portfolios and their work on this. So it's beneficial for everybody, not just Emily, just to clarify.
For sure. This is going to be more so macro versus like, I'm not going to like look specifically at any one, but I think that the approach to art direction was spot on. As what I would do though is figure out like, they clearly have a look and feel, like a very, very defined look and feel. The gift of that, if you will, right, is like you have something to work with and you know what you want to work with. The curse of that is if you were to put all these campaigns, like if you did like 5 campaigns, you don't want them all to feel the same because after a while, visual muscle memory, will get lazy and they, your consumer will say like, oh, I already saw that, or, it doesn't feel new. And so, and this is very common feedback, just to be clear, like, how do you contextualize this and articulate this, with something slightly special from a visual standpoint around this that ladders up to the master brand. But if you were to put it all on a wall, if you will, oh, this is Sweet Wins, and our Sweet Wins brand, our campaign codes, for Sweet Wins is we're leaning into this, or we're going to bring this in, or we really take advantage of this part of our design system or our guidelines or whatnot. And so that can go from like, choiceful color, being really choiceful with the colors and textures, introducing or recontextualizing like some of the typography, like that can go in so many different ways. But my main feedback around the doc, I want to say, I was like, what did I say? Oh, I was like, it's a great articulation of the insight. It's a nice flip of what folks would demonize parents for, chocolate as a treat into a good show of parenting. But what could it be improved? And I was like, copy is too on the nose, a la the brief is showing. That's a phrase, Geno, I know you've heard this before. Like when you see work, and I'm like, I know what that brief was. I should know what the brief is, but not fast. You know what I mean? Like I shouldn't be able to understand the brief of work immediately. But it takes a little time to get there, right? But one of the ways that happens is if the copy, it always tends to show up in the copy. If the copy could be read as a brief. And so when you think about Sweet Wins, like, I love it. Sweet wins. Like, oh, sweet wins, sweet, gotta win, sweet wins. And then when I looked at, the tagline that you had here, let Tony's Chocolonely be one of your many sweet parenting wins. I was like, parenting. She just dropped that one word. It would have been, chef's kiss. Because the parenting part of it, yes, we're talking clearly to parents, right? I'm not going to say you don't want them to know that, but you don't have to name it. You don't always have to name who you're talking to. Yes, you're going to talk to your target, but you could also be talking to other people, who are not necessarily parents or work with parents or whatnot, right? And so that was it. And then even like with some of the lines, get the kids out the door on time with an ethical chocolate snack packed. I would have thought of like, what's a way to still, get to that line, to stay snappy, but how do you bring in the story of ethics? How do you bring in that fair trade story in here? That is that could be really interesting. There's something interesting around fair trade and being fair, as a parent. Like there's so many, how do I say this? There's so many good ways that you could have done it and so many bad ways you could have done it too, just to be clear. And so I was like, this is right at the altitude for what I would like to receive from a team before it went to a client. And this would be something if like, my partner CEO was like, how was the review? with Emily, and I'd be like, oh, it was good. We just got to work on, these two things, or Emily and, her partner, or, but like the idea is there. The idea was still very, very clear. You are in shark waters if your creative or your ECD or your CCO asks you, what's the idea? Like, it's not looking at Geno's face, because like, what's the idea? Like, if I can see the idea, you're good money. If I can't see the idea, we got to do a lot of work. And I could see the idea here. So that was like the thing that really helped it rise to the top. But it was one of those things when I was organizing, and I finally, like, I was, looking at the links and like looking at the people. And I thought that your slide, I was like, maybe I deleted the slide. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, it's just her. And it was one of those things I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. She's an art director that writes. I was an art director that writes. There was no favoritism, people watching, just to be clear. But as someone who has worked as a designer, an art director, and a copywriter, I've held all three of those positions between Gray, Droga, and Mal, and RGA. Like, I could see what your strongest muscle is, but you do have you have a muscle for copy that you should still continue, in my opinion, to train, because a good art director can riff some copy. A good copywriter can riff a look, can riff a visual direction, and they know their references too. Like, you don't want to become too much of a subject matter expert too fast, So yeah, that's what kind of like endeared me to it. But it was more so like the tone, the intention, thinking about how this translates in social in a way that felt very easy for the brand to do it. And that's where I'll just end of like, this feels like the brand. It is a friendly brand. It's a little quirky. It's a little funky. It just so happened that right before or after this brief came out, I found myself in Amsterdam in the airport, and I was in a Tony's Chocolonely store, because it's, a Dutch brand. And, just to be surrounded in their duty-free store with all like the fun stuff, I was like, yeah, it felt like I was in that shopping experience in a way. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Love it. Love it. Well, Shannon, I know you have to get going to a very important meeting. I just wanted to thank you again. Emily, congratulations again. I hope you do.
I want to talk to Emily, because Emily
I will.
has a lot going on.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to make sure that you two just stay connected for sure.
Yeah, we will stay connected. Please make sure that we're connected. And I did show this to the global head of brand of Tony's Chocolonely.
Oh my God.
I just so happen to know her as well. And I showed it to her. She is not giving me feedback, though. She's a very, very busy woman. And their head of creative, who actually lives here in New Jersey, not too far from me. But yeah, we'll follow up about that. But I'll tell you this: if she didn't like it, she would have told me, and she did not tell me that.
That's good.
So I'll follow up with her. But
hey, maybe there's a potential coffee chat in the future.
There's definitely a potential coffee chat in the future. There's definitely some chocolate, making its way to you in the future. But we'll see about some sweet wins off the call.
Wow.
All right. And I'm sorry, guys. I gotta go be corporate. The chief part of my title is gotta happen. And like, oh my God, now. Okay. I'll see you guys. Congratulations, Emily.
Thank you so much.
Good luck to everyone else. Bye.
Thank you. Well, how was that? Pretty cool?
That was cool. Yeah.
Good,
her
good,
feedback
good.
was very nice. And it was just so nice, like being in the same room, kind of like hearing her talk about like the brief in the first place, and then how she sees my work versus like how I see it. I think it's interesting. Like with advertising, there's just different interpretation. There's no right or wrong in a sense.
Right. It's so subjective, right? And the big idea is so important. And the fact that it showed through to Shannon Washington, who is incredible and that stood out, it proves that sometimes the power of a big idea can set you apart. And the fact that you did this alone, and you are not a copywriter, you were able to keep that big idea flowing throughout the different executions that you had, and you had multiple. It says a lot about your ability to think about advertising and create ads. Because I talk to students a lot, and there is a disconnect with, you know, the passion for the industry and then just simply creating ads, and you're good at it. So it worked. And then I hope Shannon and the representative of Tony's can hop on a call with you, or you go see them in the future. That's what this is all about. And you'll also be getting your Blue Crowbar in the mail in a couple weeks.
That's exciting. I'll
Well,
try and figure out like a good spot for it.
Well, you don't use it to actually break into an agency.
Yeah, I'll be mindful.
Cool. Well then, Emily, congrats again. So grateful that you were able to come on the show, that you hopefully got a great experience of this. So if anybody's listening, they have any questions, hopefully they can reach out to you, Emily, as a mentor now, as a Hall of Famer in the Crowbar Award shows. They can reach out to you. How can people, recruiters especially, how can people find you, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn is kind of the easiest way. Will that be kind of attached in the post, or maybe
Big time. We'll tag you and stuff. So LinkedIn, and then make sure you put your portfolio link, if it's ready, in your LinkedIn bio. Pro tip to everybody, in your about section, your LinkedIn. It's easy stuff right there.
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions for me, Emily?
Not so much. I mean, I kind of already started taking a peek at the next Crowbar brief, so you might see my submission again. I don't know.
Do it. There's no limit. We've had a back-to-back silver winner. You know, we haven't had a back-to-back blue winner yet, but it could be yours. We'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, keep an eye out.
Cool. All right, Emily. Thank you so much. Nice work.
Thank you.